One more time, good afternoon, everyone. There we go. I was going to say, I'm not alone up here, I'm pretty sure. Thank you, everyone, for joining. My name is Dean Camacho. I am the communications specialist for Immaculate Heart Community. I do want to say thank you, everyone that came in person, and hello to everyone on Zoom. Everyone, there's camera back there, camera over here, saying hello to everyone that couldn't make it in person. Thank you again for hopping on. Some things to remember if this is your first time joining us here or your first time in this space, there's going to be restrooms out of the left of both of these doors. You're going to head down the hallway a little bit. It'll be on the left-hand side. We do have our Friends of the Heart volunteer program that we're very, very excited about. Please feel free to stop by the registration table to sign up and help at all the exciting events that we've got planned for this year. We do also have surveys. You're going to go ahead and see those on every table with QR codes, paper, pen, whether you like it the new way, old-fashioned way, whichever. It helps us provide, get a lot of feedback from what you guys are interested in, what you're looking to see for the rest of the year. For those that are on Zoom, we will go ahead and put a link to the survey in the chat box as well for you to fill out. We are asking you guys to join us tomorrow online on Zoom at 4 p.m. for our Bright Action program. Come learn from our Environmental Commission how you can reduce your carbon emissions through meaningful steps. Our next Lunch and Learn is March 26th at La Casa de Maria in Santa Barbara. We warmly welcome the co-founders of the Freedom to Choose Project, Dr. Bonnie Paul and Dr. David Paul, to discuss their impact on those who are incarcerated and how they help them create a second chance at freedom. These events are provided free of charge, and we do appreciate any donations and support made to keep these programs up, running, and accessible to all. We will, of course, have a Q&A portion at the end. Please hold your questions. If you do have a question, please raise your hand. We'll have people bring over some mics. Please make sure to speak into it, probably better than I'm doing right now, so our friends online can hear you and be a part of the discussion as well. We are going to alternate between questions in the room and questions on Zoom just to make sure everyone has a chance to feel heard. This is where we begin the thank yous. So thank you to the St. Paul staff and neighboring friends for creating this space for us to discuss such crucial topics. Thank you to Chef Tim for working so diligently to provide this wonderful meal for us and all those that were involved in the process. And I don't know where he's at, but it's also Chef Tim's birthday today. I know. So if we see him, if he sneaks in, we'll totally say happy birthday to him. A big, massive thank you to the Immaculate Heart team. I did read actually an excerpt from the author Bell Hooks earlier that I think ties together quite nicely not only the power of our team, but the importance of mutuality that we will learn very shortly from Reverend Sauls. As she said, Martin Luther King Jr. preached, all men and women are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Mutual giving strengthens community. Enjoying the benefits of living and loving in community empowers us to meet strangers without fear and extend them the gift of openness and recognition. Just by speaking to a stranger, acknowledging their presence on the planet, we make a connection. Every day, we all have an opportunity to practice the lessons learned in community. Being kind and courteous connects us to one another. So take this, be kind, be courteous, and connect. That is what brings us all here today. Thank you to Reverend Sauls for extending us the gift of openness. With that being said, I welcome up Matthew Hom from Clue Justice, who has a few things he'd like to share. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. How do we feel? I'm so blessed and in a state of joy to be with you this afternoon. My name is Matthew Hom, he, him, and I'm the LA and Santa Monica organizer at CLUE, Clergy and Laity United for Economic Justice. Who's heard of us? Who's heard of CLUE? Yeah, lots of folks. So as you know, we organize diverse faith communities, as the name implies, leaders, faith leaders, and laity and congregations in the sacred struggle to build a blessed community, one of worker justice, immigrant justice, racial justice, and so much more. And as part of what we always do, we work on different campaigns, whether it's workers negotiating a contract and potentially going on strike, everything from that to getting legislation passed in the city council, and then sometimes we do like policy initiative campaigns. And I came here to talk about something called the overpaid CEO tax. Has anyone heard about that or already signed? So it's something that we are gathering signatures for the end of this month, through the end of this month, to get it on the ballot in November, where it's part of the Fair Games campaign to win incredible wages and housing for workers in the years going up to and through the Olympics. And basically, we think that the pay disparity is so grotesque, where you have CEOs making, like on average, 271 times more than the median employee in their companies. Not even the entry-level employee, but the median employee. And so one way that we are going to address this inequity, but also more importantly, like get working families what they need, which is especially affordable housing in a city like Los Angeles, is we're trying to get this on the ballot, that if it passes, that for any corporation that pays their CEO more than 50 times the median employee, then with respect to their like city corporate tax, we're going to increase it up to 10 times, depending on how big that gap is. And so it's going to go to housing for working families, 70% of the money going to that, and other things like grocery services and food deserts, sidewalk repair, and other things that our communities desperately need. So we're so excited for Reverend Sauls and what he has to share in these blessed lessons. And after, I'll be right at the entrance, and I'll have a petition. And can I get a show of hands? Who's already signed, do you think? Wonderful, a few folks. And who has not signed yet? And if you live in the city of LA. Amazing, so we have some folks. I'd be happy to talk to you, answer any questions, including about Clue itself, and get petition signatures from you. And with that, I'm so blessed to be here with you, and I look forward to our conversation, and I'm going to turn it back. Thank you, everyone.
Perfect, wonderful. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, everyone. Again, please make sure to get that signed at the end. And now I will warmly welcome the Immaculate Heart Community President and Principal Executive Officer, Sherry Purcell.
And can you tell I'm ready for St. Patrick's Day? So thank you all for being here. I think before we begin our presentation and I do the introductions, I want us to just power up a little bit. Since we were here last time, this country's facing war. Our state apparently is under some kind of threat. And so we need to keep ourselves centered and keep ourselves whole through all of this. So if you haven't been here before, we started this Power Up practice last year after the election. And what we invite people to do is once a day, maybe at noontime like now, just pause for a few minutes and quiet yourself and drop out of the noise and the chaos just for a couple of minutes. And, because of the unprecedented times that we live in, many of us are struggling with the pain and the indifference that's impacted our lives as our country, I like this phrase, tries to find its moral compass again, because I think that's what the struggle is. So anyway, we invite you now, if you're so inclined, to just center yourself, your feet on the floor, close your eyes if you wish. Put your hand over your heart, and just breathe very deeply into your heart. Breathe deeply a couple of times and power it up with love. So in breath, and then send those waves of love for your heart out over our Los Angeles community. We know there's so many people struggling with ice in the streets and the poverty that we have in the city. And so send those waves of love out to Los Angeles. And again, breathe into your heart and power it up. And send those waves of love out to our nation, May we unify with those who bring love to the world. We need to be that presence in a time when there is so much anger and hate. Again, breathe into your heart, power it up strongly, and breathe that out across the world, around the world, to Mother Earth, and to everybody who's in a war zone, everybody who's fleeing danger, everyone who's starving, everyone who's looking for peace and justice. And then one more time, power up your heart, and let's spread the love around to each other in this room. We know that we're like-minded people gathered here wanting to bring hope and love and justice to the world, and so we stand here in strength and solidarity with each other. And with that, I bless this gathering, and I say amen. Thank you. So, if you haven't been here before, just a little bit about our community. We were formed here in Los Angeles 56 years ago. We were originally formed in Spain in 1848, but we reconfigured ourselves in Los Angeles as we stepped up to the patriarchy of the Roman Catholic Church at that time. And since that time, we've become an inclusive, intentional, diverse lay community of men and women. We're not nuns anymore. We don't live in convents. We live all over the place in California and Canada and England. And we believe in living out our faith, particularly through the themes of our commissions. And we have one on justice for women, justice for the environment, justice for the unhoused, justice for immigrants, refugees, and indigenous people, and we have one called Anti-Racism as Spiritual Transformation. We are a community without walls, and we accept new members annually. So if you're interested in that or you want to learn more about what we do, please check out our website or see all the flyers and information in the back. So. Today we are welcoming Reverend Kelvin Sauls to our March Lunch and Learn, and a little bit about Reverend Sauls. From 1996 to 2018, he provided pastoral and executive leadership in the United Methodist Church. As senior pastor of Holman United Methodist Church in Los Angeles and the foremost city commissioner on LASA, Reverend Sauls is the co-founder of the Black Alliance for Just Immigration, grounded in a spirituality of mutuality, equitable belonging, and Ubuntu. I hope I said that right. Ubuntu. I've heard it before and it doesn't flow. Okay, Ubuntu. Okay. My accent, no, okay. Reverend Sauls is currently deployed as the statewide community organizer with Live Free California. He was born and raised on the south side of Johannesburg, on the southern tip of Africa. He's a progressive and liberative, faith-rooted community organizer in the abolitionist, Pan-African, and emancipatory Black liberation traditions. And with a national and international reach, his organizing emanates from the intersection of South Los Angeles and South Africa. I love that. So today we will hear from Reverend Sauls on the topic of radical mutuality amid the reality of tyranny. So you know, if you've been here before, that our community sees these lunch and learns as an opportunity to live out our goal statement, which calls us to hold reverence for all creation as we foster access for all people to truth, dignity, and full human development, and to change practices and situations which impede such access. So bringing us all together from different groups, from different walks of life, we feel like we're we're joining together to build those relationships in society to change those practices. And if you've been here before, you know we have 3 mantras when you come to Lunch and Learn. We're here to educate ourselves about justice and social justice issues. We ask you to pray in your own faith tradition for the issues that we're going to hear about today. And then we ask you to find a way to act, put your faith into action. So as you listen to Reverend Sauls, please consider how his words might inspire you to take action to effect the changes that we need to see in our lives. So with that, please join me in welcoming Reverend Kelvin Sauls.
Sawubona. Oh, that's loud. All right. I bet you the folk in South Africa can hear me. Sawubona, everybody. All right. Say sawubona. Say it again. Sawubona. Sawubona is a greeting in one of the 12 languages, official languages in South Africa. Did you hear what I said? I said 12 official languages. You know, and it literally means it's the Zulu language, and Sawubona literally means I see you. So that's a greeting, you know, that manifests itself, you know, in all of the languages, even, you know, as far back, you know, as the indigenous people, the Khoisan people, you know, in Southern Africa. And for me, it's more than a greeting. You know, when a person says Sawubona, I believe that it is an affirmation of a person's, first, their humanity, secondly, their dignity, and thirdly, I believe it's an invitation to them into visibility. That one is very, very important because we find ourselves, you know, globally, right, in an experience, in a season, in a time where it has become almost legitimate to push people into invisibility. And you and I know, once a person is pushed into invisibility, that means that what happens to them is strategically and intentionally hidden from everyone else. And that's you know, for the last couple of years, that's what I believe has been happening. And so I use that greeting, you know, to basically, you know, be a antidote, if you will, to the March madness that we are in, right? No pun intended. The March madness that we are in, by saying to each one of you, I want to invite you. This space is an invitation, right? This time is an invitation to visibility. Why? Because you matter. Why? Because you were created in the image of the divine. Why? Because you are a sacred human being. Why? Because you are not just worthy, but you're worth it. How about that? Right? So just want to invite you, right, into this space. Just say to you, you know, I see you. So I'm going to once again say to you, when I say Sawubona, you can say Sawubona back, okay? All right, Sawubona. Now I'm going to ask you to turn to your neighbor and say to your neighbor, Sawubona. All right, now turn to the other neighbor and say, Sawubona. All right, turn to our tech people over there and say, Sawubona. Because I'm so appreciative of them. So thank you for the welcome, Madam President. I want to express my appreciation to my sister in good trouble, Pam. You know, we all run together, you know, with Pastor Smart at SCLC and so many other organizations. Really, Clue, I was at Holman where Reverend Lawson was, and he was the co-founder of Clue. And so when LA Voice shows up, and said, hey, we want to claim you, I said, well, there's a claim that's been here before I got here, right? And that was the claim of Clue, right? And then SCLC shows up and says, well, you rolling with us because of Reverend Lawson, and so, I just said, well, guess what? I just roll with everybody, and so we've just been, bridging with each other, because the work is more than enough for all of us to get into, and it's just been a joyous experience, with colleagues. And so, to be here today is just certainly an honor and a privilege, to share in this moment. And I was excited to come because, Immaculate Heart Community, your existence, right, is a demonstration of your resistance to being pushed into invisibility, right? Your existence is a demonstration of your resistance to say, we don't want to be second-class citizens, right? Okay? Your existence, is a demonstration of resistance, but not just that, but reimagination of how community, beloved community, can be and become, and through that, bridge to so many who feel left out, pushed down, and into invisibility. And so I'm excited to be here because it's inviting me to step into, right, the footsteps, to walk, with the footprints, right, of sisters, who basically said, we're going to define who we are. We're going to claim what God has called us to be and God has called us to do, and we're going to boldly live into that, right? And so as you were, mentioning the fact that we are here like-minded, I looked on the screen, and I saw Immaculate Heart Community. So let me, ask for permission to extend that and just say that we are not just gathering here because we are like-minded, right? We're also gathering here because we are like-hearted. And that makes a difference, at least for me, right? Okay? Because I grew up, with the saying, not I think, therefore I am. That was not part of my growing up. My mom taught me, it's not I think, right, therefore I am, right? It is I belong, therefore I am, right? So I started working with John Powell with all this belonging stuff, right? And I'm like, yes, something is familiar here that may have kind of, been pushed and, kind of got lost along the way, right? And I talked with my mom about it before she transitioned, and I said, there's a lot of stuff going on about belonging and all of that. She said, well, that's part of who we are, as a people. It's not really, how you think or what you think that invites you into community. It's the fact that we believe that you belong. And you belong because you are created in the image of the divine, right? So it is in that spirit, that I come to you, this afternoon to share, and I'll share a little bit, but I'm also going to invite some interaction from you, and then we'll have a presentation for you, around the work that Live Free seek to do, right now, that we've started to do already, and that's what's been having me on the road, the last, a couple of weeks. And that is, the Live Free, Love Free campaign that we have. We'll say a little bit about that. And then we'll then, close out with a video of just some of the, manifestations of what this campaign, is all about. We just had, one most recently in Berkeley as Wednesday evening, right? And we've had some in in Florida, in Illinois, in Washington, D.C., and pretty soon, we've had some here in Los Angeles. So you'll see, some familiar faces, but I just wanted to demonstrate, I think, what mutuality, radical mutuality, can look like amid, right, the tyranny that we are experiencing, right now. But I want to start us off just with some conversation. I use the term madness because, we are all getting into March madness. I didn't grow up with basketball, but I'm telling you, I was evangelized into it, okay? And so I know when the World Cup comes, it's going to be the same time as the NBA playoffs. So I'm going to be in trouble, you see, because I'm going to have to go back and forth to try and figure out, how I'm going to deal. It's going to be 24-hour days, right, of just sports. But March Madness is unique because, it's our young people, that are out there seeking to, make a mark. So this is, right, this is a march filled with madness, right, in so many ways. I hope that when we leave here, we would realize that amid the madness, right, that is causing so much brokenness, we can be bridges to wholeness. Let me say that again. If you miss anything I said today, right, in this madness of March, where we experience from South LA to South Africa, right, all around the world, okay, in Iran right now, okay, in Michigan, Temple Israel, right, in so many different places. Brokenness has just become the order of the day. In fact, sometimes, it seems as if you're not engaging in brokenness, you're missing the point of why you're supposed to be around here, right? You see? The brokenness, whether it's with words or with bombs or with bullets, or even just the deprivation and the marginalization that we see. How can we be strategically, intentionally, and collectively be bridges to wholeness? So I'm going to invite you to sit at your table for a few minutes. You've now said Sawubona to your, your folk ed table. Now you can have some serious conversation with them, right? Because you already told them, that I see you, so you can't run away from me. Share just briefly, if you will. We'll just take about a few minutes to do this. What are some of the brokenness that you're experiencing either in your own life or in your community or right now? And community now, you see, it's not just domestic, okay? Community now is global as well, okay? I was saying to somebody the other day, I said, with friends in so many places and so much happening in so many places, I find myself, having to, check on folk, right? My godson is in Michigan, right? So I had to call and say, how far are y'all from, right? You see? Is Bloomfield? But how far are you guys from there, And are you guys okay? All right? My niece is a teacher in the United Arab Emirates. She's there with her family. All right? Right? So when the war started, that was the first thing. So we are a borderless people, which is kind of how we've been all along, right? You see, in terms of that, with so many things happening, in so many places that connect us and that, pulls us into, what's happening. So just share what brokenness are you sitting with, today. And then also the next question for you, and I'll give you a prompt when to switch, would then be is, what would a wholeness look like for you? What would wholeness, what brokenness you are sitting with or experiencing right now, right? And you don't have to, get personal if you don't feel comfortable. You can share generally too. This is how we're going to try and stay woke, right? Because, we're trying to be put to sleep, right, in so many ways because of the deception that's happening. But then, just to share, what would wholeness look like. Okay? Right? As they said in the high school, on your marks, get set, go. We're going to ask our folk online, if you are with somebody, go ahead and sit with somebody and share, or put in the chat. People, yeah, put in the chat, what brokenness you're sitting with. And then at some point, we'll also hear around what does wholeness look like for you. Let's take about just 2 or 3 minutes to do that. Good to see you.
Those on Zoom, feel free to unmute yourselves if you'd like to chat for these few minutes.
Thirty more seconds. All right, we're going to invite our folk online we see. Thank you, Claire Harris and Sue Williamson. We see your comments, and we'll read some of it. Thank you. All right. Okay. Let's switch to what does wholeness look like for you? Wholeness. Okay. We're gonna share first at the table, and then we're gonna do some mic. Okay, good. So whenever we come back to share in the group, we're gonna give you a mic. All right. So let's use about a minute and a half. What does wholeness look like for you? And then we'll get some thoughts from the tables. All right, let's do about 30 minutes. What does wholeness look for you? All right, about 30 more seconds. Appreciate all the table talk and the conversation. It's great.
If anyone in the room would like to share, please feel free to raise your hand, and one of us will come over with the mic.
Okay, so let's transition to some sharing, from tables. Let's start with just share about brokenness quickly, and then we'll do wholeness. Ready with brokenness? Okay, there you go.
Identity crisis. Growing up in different communities that were gang infested, there was a lot of brokenness that pushed people into a belonging that wasn't good, as they were trying to find identity. So they identify with something that was completely against the fullness of what they were looking for. And then I was speaking on the fullness. What's fullness to me? And I was speaking of the fruit of the Holy Spirit.
Okay.
If even when they were like, Jesus, you're good, and Jesus was like, no, focus on the Father, because goodness is a fruit. So once you join these gangs, all those fruits are attacked: love, joy, peace, kindness, goodness. It turns into something else and is demonized. But if one fruit is cut off, the soul tree is going to wither. All the other fruits are going to wither. So operating in the fullness of my spirit, being trained up in the right way, because I was in a foster system. So I saw my mom in the streets. I saw the gangbangers selling drugs to my mom. So that brokenness could have allowed me, ironically, to join them. I've seen so many people see that and then join them instead of taking a stand against that, because many are the ways of the world. So I didn't allow that brokenness, because God wants a broken heart and a contrite spirit. So I was broken down in a sense to where I surrendered completely to God to handle all the broken parts.
All right.
To fulfill me in such a way. And I'm flourishing in my anointing, and I'm going against the organized confusion of such identity groups from brokenness.
Right. So brokenness is identities foisted on us, right? Yeah, that's a big one. Anyone else who wants to share from any table over here? Yes.
So I think for me, brokenness is living in a place where the system forces people to lose hope, where they feel that they are so far gone that they can't be helped. I work with a lot of homeless and recently sheltered populations, and especially around MacArthur Park and Skid Row. And I see so many people that say, "Oh, I'm beyond help," and that's the brokenness that I see that impacts me greatly.
That's real. That's real.
Yeah.
How about wholeness?
Wholeness I see as government systems that don't destroy people's hope. Government systems that let people know that whether through indifference or intent, that they don't need to break people. That people are not a commodity; they're the reason for existence.
Yeah. So it's not about people looking at people as commodity, but looking at them as in terms of their humanity. Yeah. Okay. Let's take who else? Oh, over here, and then we'll come here.
We were speaking on more of a community and global level, and one of the things talked about was, especially over the last 6 years, it's become increasingly easy to become isolated, to keep to yourself, starting with COVID and being able to do things online and not participate in person. And when you have that isolation, you lose touch with your community and bits of yourself in that you're not having those interactions. And as you mentioned earlier, there are so many things going on locally, globally, that it's very easy to get divided, distracted, and not know where to start again, how to feel like you're contributing, how to feel like you know what the next step is. So when we think of brokenness, that's one of those pieces.
Isolation. What about wholeness? Anybody else at your table want to talk about wholeness? Yes.
I think I'm struggling with wholeness because I've had the blessing of living through so many periods. I grew up during the Second World War. My father, I'm a middle-aged oops. So I've seen or heard a lot of history. My father fought in the First World War. My brothers fought in the Second World War. My husband served in the Korean War. I protested against the Vietnam War. I, um, I taught in one of the first integrated schools in Texas. So I lived during the civil rights movement. And so I had great hope that the world was changing and moving in the right direction. I gave energy to the movement in the right direction. I thought we were moving away from racism. And so I find we must have hope. And I'm so eager for us all to share how we can stand together on hope, on wholeness. I'm seeking that.
Yes, yes, yes. That's so powerful. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Yes. Yes, ma'am.
So, what I'm exploring is how brokenness, I feel like a lot of brokenness comes from this pretending I'm okay when I'm not okay, or pretending what's going on is okay when it's not okay. And that avoidance that we do to stay comfortable because we don't want to look at what's really going on inside of ourselves and outside of ourselves.
Anybody else about a wholeness around that? They want to share from the table, or anyone else? Yeah, then we're going to go to going to read a few notes from our folk online. Okay. Let's read what some of our folk are saying, around brokenness. Is there a way we can go back to brokenness? Or we can maybe just read what they say about wholeness. Is there a way we can go back to brokenness? The first couple of notes on brokenness. There we go. All right. So quickly, our government is broken. Brokenness is the U.S. bombing a girls' school because their intelligence was faulty, right? Right. And we supposedly have, the best of the best. Wholeness. Okay. There we go. Let's do one more brokenness. 22 years ago. Claire says, my mom passed away. It adds a weight to the general world troubles, as she was so good about community organizing. Brokenness is the lost and the lonely who have lost their families and friends, to war. Right? We can empathize and identify with that. Let's go to wholeness. Claire says, wholeness is seeing and being a part of community work and family still around, getting to show them love and getting to show them care. Yes. Wholeness is the ability to deeply smile. I like that, deeply smile. Yeah. To be open, accept foremost, include, rejoice, celebrate together, and not be essay first and foremost. It starts with myself. It starts, in my heart, and then. Also wholeness is, bringing together, mind and action. That's where we find ourselves. And and radical, mutuality for me, as a South African, is connecting the not just concept of mutuality, but the experience of mutuality. Connecting it from a South African perspective, and also connecting it, with what the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, about mutuality. And that quote was read earlier, right? Because he writes that, one from, right, the jail, in Montgomery, right? That's his letter from incarceration, right? He invites those who are supposedly free, right? He invites them into reimagination as he responds, for the most part, to the Christian faith community, right? Now I grew up not necessarily, as a child listening to Dr. King, but we had a concept, right, called Ubuntu, all right? And Ubuntu basically says, I am because you are, and because you are, therefore I am, right? And so when I was in undergrad and started taking, some of my, religion classes, right, I get introduced now, right, to the life, the legacy, the ministry of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and that provides a port of entry for me to get, deeper and deeper into not just who he was, but who the movement was, very important, but not just that, what happened during that time, right? You see, this year we will be, commemorating, is what I say, not celebrating, commemorating 250 years, right, of systems built on brokenness. I mean, let's just be straight up about it, right? When the Puritans landed here, right, okay, there were people here, Columbus did not get lost. He did not discover anything, right? There were people here, and it's the same thing in South Africa. And the way we describe it in South Africa is somebody coming into my house, right? While I'm in the bathroom, you see, and then just take over the house and lock me in the bathroom and say, oh, this is my house now. All right? And we use the example of bathroom because that person would then come into the bathroom, do what they had to do, but not let me out and lock me back in the bathroom. That's what we're dealing with, in terms of that. And I think it's very important for us to come to terms with that, not just come to terms with it, but come to heart with it, come to spirit with it, because we have used religion to justify the isolation and the insulation and the exploitation and the strategies in brokenness, right? That has taken place all over the world, right? And so when I say I am because you are, and because you are, therefore I am, I'm saying that we are inextricably connected. My humanity is connected with yours. My dignity is connected with yours. And therefore, in South Africa, we had a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, right, that talks about the fact that there can be accountability without stripping a person of their dignity. Even though accountability never came, and the result of that is white refugees from South Africa coming to the United States because of so-called genocide. That's what happens when there's no accountability for brokenness. And we hear that as the transnational connection continues now from the southern tip of Africa straight up into North America and throughout Europe and around the world. And so radical mutuality is to come to terms with the WMDs that we all are dealing with, right? And connect the careless and dangerous dots between these WMDs. WMDs, what are you talking about? Yeah, I'm talking about the first one is the big lie, the weapon of mass deception, which results in the second one, which is the weapon of mass denial, which results in the third one, which is the weapon of mass discrimination, which results in the fourth one, which is the weapon of mass division, which results in the fifth one, which is the weapon of mass distraction, which results in the fifth one, which is the weapon of mass destruction. So somebody asked me and said, yeah, Reverend Sauls, how do you, just keep it together, and all that's going on? Because I'm not tuning out of anything. And I say that because, thanks be to God, I've been able to categorize which weapon is being used in the headlines every day. And the U.S. media is complicit in this. Right? Okay. If you look at what has happened so far and what is commonly into March Madness right now is the ongoing weapon of mass deception. whether it's about the voting, well, whether it's what happened way back then, which James Baldwin called the big lie, right? That is still going on, right? And then there's deep denial about it in terms of, I didn't know about it. I don't know about that. I don't know that person. I don't know, those people. We just celebrated the birthday of, Congressman John Lewis, and the president is asked, but I don't know John Lewis, right? Weapon of mass denial. You see? And that then results, on every day, how the weapon, of mass, deception, denial, and distraction is being used. And right now, we are probably in the biggest weapon of mass distraction that's taking place because everything that's happening is because, there are just some files that some folks just don't want to get released. I mean, let's be real about it. You see? And thinking that, because, we drop a little something here and we drop a little something there, we want to obligate people what to report on. And the other weapon is just a weapon of mass division, right? Which continues to take place. So all of these MDs, that's not medical doctors, right? All of these MDs, beloveds, pushes us into isolation and pushes us apart from each other. That's why MAGA for me is not just make America great again. MAGA for me is make apartheid great again. Because if you look at the system of apartheid, all it was keep people apart, right? My brother said, foist a deceptive identity on them in terms of how they ought to relate with somebody else. Okay, create a paternalistic system around that identity and teach people how to hate each other. That's apartheid. And as a black South African, that's what's happening, y'all. So the isolation is real because it has been systematized and organized to become insulation. And that insulation then gives us the reasons to then put up walls instead of building bridges. John Paul called that otherization. And it's all being fed by hate and hatred. And that's what Dr. King is writing about when he writes, this letter. When he talks about that we are all inextricably connected. We all are on a common journey, a single garment of destiny. What affects somebody else directly affects everybody almost indirectly. And so this radical mutuality is taking all those WMDs, right? And turning it into another WMD, a weapon, right, of mass dignity. How do we boldly bridge with one another? And for me, you see, it's not just about belonging. It's about equitable belonging. Now, why you say that? Because the apartheid regime in South Africa said, the black folk belong here, but over there, in the townships. Women belong here, but over there, second-class citizenship. Blacks should be in schools, but they get Bantu education. Right? So it has to be about equitable belonging. So this radical mutuality, is saying that, yes, bold belonging is important, but it has to be equitable. Right? And that means it challenges the genocidal acts, right, of so many countries on other countries. And it happens in so many ways, whether it is with dropping bombs or using bullets, or whether it is by way of poverty. Because poverty is just genocide in slow motion. You see? So the radical mutuality is basically saying that my humanity is inextricably connected to yours. Yes, we have to deal with what our ancestors did and what they've experienced, because there is a connection between, generational trauma, but that connects with generational wealth. And repair has to be made. And if South Africans or folk in the U.S. say, well, I didn't do it, then give up the privilege and the wealth that you're enjoying as a result of it. Now we can talk. Because that's equitable belonging. So we use this term, beloved community, and in reading the final chapter of the final book of Dr. King, Where Do We Go From Your Chaos or Community, he has a chapter in there called God's Beloved World House. And so Pastor Smart and I, we always go back and forth around the intersectionality between those two, because they are deeply, directly connected. One cannot roll without the other. And Dr. King knew that. Hence Vietnam, right? Hence connecting it with economics, civil rights with economics. You see? And that has to be held in creative and courageous tension, because if we don't do that, and how it then strengthens democracy, it opens up the way for tyranny. Because people have been so deeply isolated and so deeply insulated, and have justified it, for me as a Christian, with Christian nationalism. Right? And there are all kinds of other nationalisms too in other parts of the world, whether it's in India, whether it's in Israel. Everybody now, nationalism has been infused, that ideology into the theology that continue to cause the brokenness. And now we are not just knocking on the door of tyranny, y'all, but we are busting down the door to step into tyranny. So how do we respond to that? I'm going to ask to see if we can, in the last few minutes, just show, how, we can deal with this. And this is a long history. It's found in every major religion, and that is the power of love. Help me out, Luther Vandross, you see? Okay, right? And so at Love Free, where I am, on the deployment team there, we've started this campaign called Live Free, Love Free. Live free because we believe everybody ought to be able to live with the necessary freedom that the divine has endowed him or her to, right? Okay? And so now we've connected that with Love Free. And it's really to see how we can connect with this radical notion of love. And that's what Dr. King was all about, right? He would go back to, love. In fact, one of his books, right, Pastor Smart, right, was entitled, what? The Power of Love. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that was the centerpiece, for him. And the same for us in South Africa. Bishop Tutu taught us, right? If you give yourself permission to hate somebody else, that hate in the end is going to catch up with you, right? Yeah, the strength of love is going to catch up with you. And so this Live Free Love movement is an initiative, presented to focus on uniting, and we have a goal of 300,000 people and 1,000 congregations to stand up for democracy and justice together. As we move down, We're creating a powerful community that believes in living free and loving freely. And it's all centered, there's a pledge, that you can take, but it's all centered in 4 initiatives, that we are working on. The first one is a dinner series, dinner dialogues, just like we've had, today. Doesn't have to be on a Sunday, it can be on a Friday. We know Shabbat Shalom is on Friday and Saturday, right? We know our Muslim, sisters and brothers, they gather on Fridays. But it doesn't matter what day. It's an invitation to see how can we gather at table for courageous conversation with cuisine, right? And you'll see when I show the video how that has taken place. One table, one family coming together in one love. That's what I add because, I'm down with Bob Marley, okay? You see, in terms of that. Second one is how to invite people to really get to know and understand their power, because we've realized a lot of people just feel so powerless. I don't know what to do. I feel like I've lost my power. And so we have these experiences around teaching people organizing, because we believe everybody can be an organizer. Before Desmond Tutu was Archbishop, guess what he was? An organizer. Before Dr. Martin Luther King was who he was, a Nobel laureate and all of it, guess what he was? An organizer. Before Rosa Parks, didn't stand up in the bus, she was an organizer. And there is a difference between activism, advocacy, and organizing. And President Obama was an organizer, you see? So that's what the second piece is all about, and we connect with various organizations around that. And then, of course, civic engagement, souls to the polls. Pastor Smart, right? We how many souls to the polls we've been a part of, right? In terms of just letting folk know. And we see the voter suppression going on right now. I don't know whether you've heard what the senator from Texas decided to do. He decided to support the SAVE Act, and the SAVE Act is literally turning the voting rights, protections upside down. We were just Bloody Sunday, last Sunday, right? Which was all about voting rights and the Voting Rights Act that we just celebrated 60 years on to reverse brokenness. You see, and so we're letting folk know. Tyranny knows the power of vote. That's why they're messing up the power of vote. Right? And so we're inviting folk by way of table, because when you're at table, you can proximate with one another. When you're at table, you can look each other in the eye. When you're at table, insulation disappears. When you're at table, suspicion disappears. Right? Because we are at each other, we are with each other, at table, right? We look for ways to discover our power and how to exercise that power, right? Is by taking a step of love, an intercessory step, which is voting. And I know folk have said this is the most consequential elections. I just stopped by to tell you. This is the election will determine whether we will have a multiracial, equitable democracy, or whether that is out the window, as there's a move to nationalize, you see, voting, okay? And then finally, we gather once a month, virtually, to see how we can, keep the flame burning, with what we call organizing the church. And even though it says church, it is multi-faith, in terms of that. And so we transition, we bridge brokenness with wholeness amid the madness by amplifying love. Love as agape, love as a verb, love as saying, I see you, Love as saying you belong equitably. Love as saying that peace like war must be waged. Love saying that it is my duty to stand up for my sister and my brother. It's my duty to go and vote. It's not just an obligation, but it's the path to our common liberation from the current system that's in place to facilitate brokenness. And so we invite you to join, this movement in any way that you seek to participate in. And we'll have this link to you. It starts with taking the pledge. Following that, we help folk organize dinners, and we're going to, let's cue up the video, and then we close out with the video, just to see how this is already happening, for us, as we, do this work, connecting, with folk. I've had the pleasure of being with folk on the south side of LA and on the west side, with my sister Janet, at Church of Ocean Park, around, how it happens there. We've had boot camps in the Central Valley, from Sacramento to Stockton to Fresno, and we've done it in a variety of ways. So, all right. So as you can see, we even use Lunar New Year, right? Because of the message of the horse, right? You see? And had a meal downtown. I think, we'll end there and see if there are any, questions. Let's engage in conversation based on what you've heard, and be more than glad to continue the conversation by way of, questions, responses, disagreements, broader perspectives. That's what it's all about, as we continue in this work together.
We'll go ahead and start with in-room questions for now. Again, please feel free to raise your hand. We'll go ahead and bring a mic over to you. And it's, of course, whoever we see first. We'll go ahead and alternate between questions in the room and then anyone on Zoom, whether you'd like to speak or type it in the chat, please feel free to do so. We'll go ahead and switch over and we got a couple questions going. Anyone in the room that would like to start us off?
While that person is thinking about it, I just want to acknowledge a childhood friend of mine I see there that's joining us from Johannesburg, South Africa, Dr. Mary Augusta Adam. Welcome. South Africa's in the house, y'all. All right. Any questions or comments?
So I, like I said earlier, I work in and around predominantly unhoused populations, and I just want to say how much I appreciate the idea of equitable mutuality. It's something that I realize I practice in the work that I do, and it was nice to be able to hear it put to words and reminding people, for instance, I was in MacArthur Park this morning and reminding people that MacArthur Park is not necessarily where they belong, it's where they're forced to be.
Yeah.
And it was nice to come off that and then come here and hear something, a practice that I hold dear, put into words and an explanation. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yes. As you walk over there, I remember, when I was, in South Africa, and I would go home, in between breaks, and would always make sure I volunteer, especially with the church in my own, home church, but also the church in the city. And Bishop Mvume Dandala was the pastor then of Central Methodist Mission, and they had a Wednesday time when they would go out with a medical team, with a food team, to kind of just do what needed to be done, with our houseless, homeless siblings. And before we would go, he would say to us, he'd say, when you encounter, right, one of your sisters, your brothers, look them in the eye, and, I was like, well, why do I have to look them in the eye? He says, because you affirm them, because they are not going to, they're going to, try and avoid that. But you just, as you proximate with them, that eye contact is such a powerful affirmation, that I see you, and you are worthy of me looking at you, and not necessarily judging you, but I have a meal for you. If you have any physical ailments, there's a nurse, that's a team, and to do that.
So we do something very similar at MacArthur Park. We have a CNA or an LVN come with us. We have an addiction counselor. But whenever we engage with people, we don't lean over them. We squat down to their level, and we become equals with them. And we're not lording over somebody talking to somebody. We're setting ourselves down to their level, no matter how low to the ground they are. We meet them there.
Yeah, that's so Jesse Jackson. When you see somebody down, they don't look down to them. But the only time you look down on somebody is when you go there to pick him up. Yes.
Okay, I'm trying to see, where do I begin? I was in a foster system 11 years. I've been knowing Pastor Sauls for about 15 years. I received an award for being a transitional age youth and being an advocate for other foster youth trying to come out the system. I am a Hebrew Israelite from the tribe of Levites. The birthstones are the 12 tribes of Israel. Just finding my identity and asking God who I am through all of the oppression. I have all the gifts of the Holy Spirit. I can see the future. I can heal people. The gifts of the Holy Spirit are real. I understand why I had to see drug dealing, prostitution, gang banging, the foster system, my mom on drugs. I understand why I had to grow up like that so that I could be purified to go back to that and bring people out as a servant, a leader, but a servant. I go to Regent University, which used to be Christian Broadcasting Network University with the VeggieTales. It's called Regent now. We study a biblical worldview, and love does conquer all. This is a spiritual battle to win back souls as fishermen of souls. So when we're doing this community work, you got to also understand there's spiritual battles going on with people, demons possessing these people, inducing addiction so that they can succumb to more possession. So when we go out to help resourcefully, prayer is powerful. Walking in your anointing oil, praying for people is powerful. Growing up the way I grew up, I was involved in different type of loves because there's 4 different type of loves. In finding my identity, I always loved to love, even though I saw broken depictions of love, but I realized that I was loving in eros or loving in philos until I studied what agape was. And as we're working with a bunch of different type of beliefs, religions, and agape love, Jesus died for everybody. So taking that understanding of that love to the field, and I'm glad that when you did speak on political parties, you didn't hate bash, because a lot of people don't realize when they speaking about Trump, they're hate bashing him before you actually just realize in Deuteronomy, God appointed the head of the nation because the people didn't want to go to God no more. They wanted to go to someone to blame. So taking that approach and really talking about the facts of what we can do, and realizing identity in all of the different that you said, deception, distraction, despair, chaos. This is pumped on the news all the time. And as a representation of my brothers and sisters, I don't like how we're displayed on the news, in the media, in rap, and it's just not right. So I just wanted to share that and understanding and walking in your anointing and knowing who you are and whose you are. Even though my mom was on drugs, she always reminded me of biblical principles, even though she was fighting what she was fighting. And now my mom is off of drugs. She has a house now. Right. She has a degree now. So I have testimony after testimony of seeing my mom come off drugs, getting my life together so that she can see that it's possible, and honoring my mom. I didn't know what that was because of all of the issues we had, and someone told me that she don't even want to be like that. And then I started thinking of it different. Why am I always thinking why she's not utilizing resources, why she's not? But when I started thinking she don't want to be like that, then I started seeing her different and understanding the spiritual battle she was going through, and not really crying no more and getting distracted about what I can and can't do to help her out of her situation. Right. She's out of that, and I just wanted to share that testimony.
Great. Thank you.
That
Yeah,
was wonderful.
yes.
Thank you. So we're going to take a second. Anyone on Zoom, if you'd like to go ahead and unmute or ask a question, please feel free to do so. Now's kind of your time. And if you're still feeling a little camera shy and you don't want to unmute, please feel free to put it in the chat as well. We'll go ahead and read it out.
Anything in the chat? Okay. Okay, Mary is saying, although divided by land or the great seas, the love we share for all people through community work is incredible. Our work is not in vain. Collaboration will bring us together and create the world that we imagine. That comes to us from Johannesburg, South Africa. Yeah, all right, good. Yes.
I didn't get the definition of the South African word Ubuntu.
Ubuntu.
What is that?
Yeah, I am because you are, and because you are, therefore I am. That's the definition for humanity or mutuality. Yeah. Yes.
Speaking of South Africa, can you give us an update on how things are now? Are there factions and divisions like in this country, or how is it? Is it more united, more divided? What's the tone?
There are a lot of divisions because you have to remember, you know, again, you know, as I mentioned, apartheid thrived on divide and conquer, right? And the divisions was based on the fact that difference is deficient. Therefore, those divisions then created a paternalistic society. And so right now, even though, one, we have democracy, two, we have the world's most progressive constitution, right? Equity has not arrived in South Africa yet, right? So equitable belonging, you know, and economic transformation is key because there cannot be true reconciliation until there is economic conciliation. Very, very important, right? So the economic repair has to take place. And so there's a book that was written called, you know, Apartheid is Private Now. You know, and all it basically says is we're dealing with economic apartheid right now, right, in terms of that. But again, you know, because of the fact that that was taken off the table because of the influence from the United States and the United Kingdom, right? You know, developing and funding the social strategy for upliftment, right? All of a sudden there was an expiration date on that. And so what we're dealing with right now is a huge underclass, huge economic challenges, and because of people still recovering from the divisions, right, grounded in that if you're different, there must be something wrong with you, or you're deficient, or I'm better than you, right? If you put on top of that, right, the economic, you know, challenges, South Africa right now is going through a very, very challenging time, you know, and then, like in the U.S., you know, we're also dealing with a lot of corruption, you see, around that, and so we have a couple of more revolutions or lovolutions, as I call it, that we have to deal with. And reparations is one of them. We cannot get away from that, you know. But, you know, there's an internal view of what's going on and an external view. Of course, on the international stage, South Africa, you know, is playing a very, very strategic and critical role as it deals with tyranny, genocide, you know, and all that's going on, you know, given, right, you know, that connection between 1948, right, you see, and how then to, you know, to build from that. But a lot of challenges, you know, socially, politically, economically, and Mary and I are from a community, right, where because of all of the inequities, right, my community is going through what South LA went through in the 70s and the 80s. Gangs, guns, and drugs. That's what runs. In fact, this week, the military was deployed to my community because of how devastating that impact is, and it's all rooted, you know, in economic, you know, deprivation and marginalization. So pray for South Africa. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. It's. Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, and it's both ideology and theology, right? And that is still, you know, at the heart of what we're dealing with, you know, in South Africa. Okay. We can talk some more afterwards with anybody if you have some more questions. All right.
Any other questions for right now? We can give them one more round of applause before we have Sherry come up.
You know, as our president comes up, you know, love is greater than hate. And we really ought not to take that lightly. And the whole piece about table talk, what makes it so powerful is regardless of my physical height, when I'm sitting at the table, right? You see what happens? We actually are all physically equal because we can see each other and look each other in the eye. And that's the power of proximation, the power of getting closer to each other. And I believe, that's, how we can feel each other's and hear each other's brokenness, break through the isolation and the insulation, and realize that we do need each other if you want to bridge brokenness with wholeness. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Sauls. I brought some notes up because I was taking notes because I wanted to remember a couple of things. First of all, your message of radical mutuality and Ubuntu. I hope that really sank in for everybody, and because we're all affected by weapons of mass deception, weapons of mass denial, weapons of mass distraction, weapons of mass division. We experience it every moment of our lives, don't we? And it's impacting all of us, and it's destroying our life as we want it to be. Let's put it as we want it to be, right? So thank you for peeling that back and opening that up for us. It really gave me a new perspective on some of the levels that we're all connected to, right? So on behalf of Immaculate Heart Community, I just want to offer you this gift of gratitude for being here today, and thank you, and making us an international Zoom today. That was exciting. And I also just want to recognize Reverend Smarts. Here's with us today, Pastor Smarts. So thank you for being here.